Have you ever been shanghaied? And no, I don't mean experiencing the most populous Chinese and third most populous city on earth, center of commerce, culture, and politics, and the world's busiest container port. I mean shanghaied as in being drugged or robbed and being unwillingly forced aboard a merchant vessel. Blah. Okay. Crimping was rampant in port cities across the United States, but it was especially prevalent in San Francisco and the Pacific Northwest during the late 1800s and early 1900s. The demand for sailors was high, and unscrupulous characters saw an opportunity to profit off their shortage by any means necessary. James Shanghai Kelly operated in San Francisco, running a boarding house near the waterfront where he would lure in unsuspecting men, often getting them drunk or even drugging them. In Portland, Oregon, Joseph Bunko Kelly was running a similar operation. He owned a saloon and boarding house called the Puget Sound House, which served as a base for his crimping activities. Like his namesake in San Francisco, Bunko Kelly was known for shanghaiing sailors, as well as for theft, assault, and even murder. Up in the Washington Territory, Billy Gohl worked as a union agent in the town of Aberdeen. His job was to find work for sailors, but he had a sinister side hustle. Rumors swirled of him killing dozens of sailors, earning him the moniker Ghoul of Grays Harbor, though he was only ever convicted of 2 murders. Here are some of their stories. Crimping ain't easy. James Kelly was a legendary figure on the San Francisco waterfront, known for his distinctive red beard and hot temper. He operated multiple boarding houses and saloons near the docks, using these establishments to find men he could shanghai. One of Kelly's most audacious schemes happened in the early 1870s. Renting a steamboat called the Goliath, he threw a massive birthday party and invited many of his fellow crimps. Once out to sea, Kelly's men served the attendees whiskey spiked with opium. Incapacitated, he delivered the unconscious victims to ships needing crew. Worried that returning without his guests would look suspicious, Kelly got lucky when he came across a sinking ship called the Yankee Blade. After picking up the survivors, he simply continued his party cruise, returned to shore, and it was as if nothing had happened. Through his cunning, ruthlessness, and advantageous location near the port, Shanghai Kelly was able to build a highly successful crimping operation and became one of the most infamous practitioners of shanghaiing in San Francisco's nautical history. Joseph Bunko Kelly, later known as the King of the Crimps, was a notorious figure in Portland's waterfront underworld during the late 1800s. He arrived in Portland with his brother William and quickly established himself in the sailors' boarding house business. These establishments were known for their poor conditions and for trapping sailors into debt, forcing them to work on ships to pay off their lodging bills. Kelly's success in this business was due in part to his reputation as a fierce brawler and his willingness to engage in morally questionable practices. Kelly earned his Bunko nickname in 1885 after providing a ship captain with a crewman that turned out to be a cigar store Indian, pocketing $50 for the deception. In one infamous deal in 1893, he delivered 22 men who had mistakenly consumed embalming fluid from the open cellar of a mortuary. Most of the men were dead, but Kelly still sold them all to a captain who sailed before the truth was discovered. He earned $52 for each man that he delivered. Kelly's efficiency in crimping was legendary. According to another source, he once set a record by rounding up 50 men in just 3 hours. Throughout the 1880s and early 1890s, Kelly worked with another prominent crimp named Larry Sullivan. However, their relationship soured when Kelly became involved in the Blum-Dunbar opium smuggling scandal of 1893. Kelly's testimony against Sullivan's associate, James Lotan, likely cost Sullivan significant money and influence, leading to a bitter feud between the two. Kelly's criminal career came to a head in 1894 when he was accused of murdering George Sayers, a former saloon keeper, in a botched shanghaiing attempt connected to an opium swindle. Despite maintaining his innocence and suggesting he was framed by Sullivan, Kelly was found guilty and sentenced to prison in Salem. The 1900 federal census identifies Kelly as an inmate at the Oregon State Penitentiary and indicates that he was born in Connecticut, contradicting earlier accounts of his origins. After 13 years in prison, Kelly was pardoned in 1908 and wrote a book titled 13 Years in Oregon Penitentiary. detailing the conditions of his incarceration. Following the publication of his book, Kelly left for a trip to California and attempted to capitalize on his notoriety with a book tour, but found that his infamy had faded. He returned to the underworld, this time in San Francisco, where he was last mentioned working for a gangster in 1908. His ultimate fate remains unknown. While Kelly's actual exploits may not have justified his legendary status, his colorful moniker Bunko and the tall tales spun about him by storytellers like Stuart Holbrook have cemented his place in Portland's criminal folklore, earning him the title the King of the Crimps, despite the often grim realities of his actions. Billy Gohl, born in 1873, was a German-American Union official who worked in Aberdeen, Washington in the early 20th century. As a Union official for the Sailors' Union of the Pacific, Gohl had access to a steady stream of potential victims. Sailors arriving in Aberdeen would often visit the Union building to collect mail and deposit money. Gohl, who was typically on duty alone, would target sailors who were just passing through and had no family or friends in the area. According to accusations, Gohl would murder these sailors in the Union building, taking their valuables and disposing of their bodies in the Wishkah River or directly into Grays Harbor. Some reports suggest there was a chute from a trapdoor in the building that led straight into the river, while others claim Gohl used a small boat to dump the bodies. Between 1905 and 1910, around 40 bodies were found in the waters near Aberdeen, and Gohl was suspected of being responsible for many of these deaths. Despite suspicions, Gohl continued his crimes until his accomplice, John Klingenberg, was arrested and brought back to Aberdeen after attempting to flee to Mexico. Klingenberg testified to seeing Gohl with Charles Hatberg, a sailor whose body was found shot dead in early 1910. A gun found near Hatberg's body was traced back to Gohl. Gohl was arrested in February 1910 for Hatberg's murder and the murder of John Hoffman, a witness Gohl had shot and Klingenberg later killed. Though suspected of over 40 murders, Gohl was convicted of these two and sentenced to life in prison in May 1910. He was later transferred to an insane asylum and died there in 1927. Some historians, like Aaron Goings, have cast doubt on Gohl's guilt, suggesting that many of the deaths in Grays Harbor may have been accidental, resulting from dangerous conditions on the docks and in the timber industry. Goings proposes that influential businessmen, hoping to remove a powerful labor figure, unjustly blame Gohl for these deaths. Whether a ruthless serial killer or a scapegoated Union man, Billy Gohl's story remains a dark and controversial chapter in the maritime history of the Pacific Northwest. So there you have it, folks. The wild, wicked world of crimping. A time when a night out of drinking could lead to an unexpected career change and a one-way ticket to the life at sea. The crimps, with their devious tricks and shady dealings, were the stuff of legend, and for good reason. Just imagine, one minute you're enjoying a pint at your local watering hole, and the next you're waking up with a splitting headache, the salty spray of the ocean in your face, and a ship captain barking orders at you. Talk about a hangover from hell. Countless men fell victim to these shameless crimps, their lives forever changed by a chance encounter and fateful drink. Some never made it back home, their fates sealed by the treacherous tides and the cruel machinations of men like Shanghai Kelly, Bunko Kelly, and Billy Gohl. It's a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who survived that we can look back on this era with a shake of our heads and chuckle. So when, next time you find yourself in a port city, raising a glass in a dimly lit bar, take a moment and appreciate your freedom. And if a friendly stranger offers to buy you a drink, maybe think twice before accepting. You never know where you might end up. This concludes our journey into the sordid world of crimping. Remember, folks, always keep your wits about you, and if a deal seems too good to be true, it probably is. Until next time, stay vigilant and stay on dry land.